Is there a movie that we should go and see if I've rejected everything you've told me thus far?
I had actually teed this up rather brilliantly. Titanic is back in cinemas for its 25th anniversary in time for Valentine's Day in a 4K 3D HDR. You know, this is as immersive as it's going to get.
Celebrate Valentine's Day watching thousands of people die in the sea.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and it actually, in a way, you've kind of cut to the heart of it.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, you know, what more is there left to say about Titanic? You know, nominated for 14 Oscars, which matched All About Eve, won 11, thereby tying with Ben-Hur. Box office in excess of $2 billion. After threatening to sink a studio, and I mean, the whole thing with, you know, Fox and Paramount is really fascinating. Everyone was expecting this to crash and burn, and there was no way that there was enough money in the world to make its money. But of course it did, and it did because its audience went to see it more than once. The search for Rose being compared for the search for Scarlett O'Hara. The film itself, the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio looks like he's 4 years old and you can't believe that he's been gallivanting about Europe and he's more worldly wise somehow than Kate Winslet's character, who looks like she will always know infinitely more than him. The naff Irish dancing deck, the quotable one-liners about, you know, Jack, I'll never let go. The debate about whether or not two people could have floated on that door and, you know, Jack, I'll never let go, oops. The soundtrack with that, I think that terrible earworm theme tune, and I listened to it again. I went back and listened to Celine Dion doing My Heart Will Go On. Were you a fan of it?
The movie?
No, of Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On.
I understand why she's incredibly popular, and I appreciated the film.
Okay, fine. Here's what I think. When I saw it the first time, I thought the only person in this film who actually gets the register of it is Billy Zane, because he understands that he's in a kind of scenery-chewing melodrama. David Warner kind of quietly stealing the show. There is that one shot of the old people huddling together as the water comes in, which is actually a horrifying shot and works rather well. And of course, remember I was a Cameron fan before this because I loved Aliens and I loved Terminator. And I remember when it came out, I was very, very snotty about it, and I made all I was, and I made all these things about, well, it's not a night to remember, is it? And I don't know whether I've told you this story before, but from the Paramount point of view, the person who was responsible for being in charge of the production and the money stuff there was Sherry Lansing. Well, in 1998, when Titanic came out. Because this is the 25th anniversary and just in time for Valentine's Day. I was making The Fear of God about The Exorcist, and I was even more gobby and arrogant then than I am now. And Billy Friedkin, who's the director of The Exorcist, is married to Sherry Lansing. And of course, I didn't understand anything really. And so he asked me what I thought of Titanic, and I told him what I thought of Titanic. I said, the problem with Titanic is it's not Night to Remember, and Night to Remember is a film about Britishness in crisis, and Titanic is a love story that the minute it hits the iceberg, I don't care what happens to them. Anyway, we then went to have some food somewhere, and we were joined by Sherry Lansing, who I don't think I really realised who Sherry Lansing was because I was young and stupid. And Billy said, tell Sherry what you just told me. And I went, sure. So I sat there and told Sherry Lansing what was wrong with Titanic.
Digging that hole?
I mean, like, get in the JCB because I am tunneling my way into a massive cesspit of shame. And so I just held forth about what was wrong with Titanic. This, incidentally, was a film that took $2 billion and which turned out to be the smartest investment Paramount could ever have made. And Sherry Lansing sat there and she listened to this. And at the end of it, she said, yes, do you know what your problem is? And I said, no. She said, you're not a teenage girl.
That is definitely true.
And it has really stuck with me. It's really stuck with me in a kind of life-changing way. Because on the one hand, God bless her, she was being incredibly well-behaved. She could have just said, who the hell is this?
Stop right there.
Yeah, get out and never darken my towels again. But what she did was, firstly, she let me hang myself. And secondly, she said something that sounded funny, but was actually extremely profound. And I think about this almost every day. My problem is I'm not a teenage girl. And therefore, the movie that I saw was not the movie that was out there in the world working. It was not the movie that was hitting an absolute Romeo and Juliet tragedy sweet spot with its intended audience. Because I had imagined that James Cameron was a director for, people like me, like science fiction and guns and, spaceships and robots. That's not who Titanic was aimed at. I mean, it was aimed at a lot of people, but its core audience were people for whom Leonardo DiCaprio, is essentially doomed Shakespearean hero. Kate Winslet is them. And the whole reason that the love story works is because it's doomed and because it's tragic. And actually the point about it's a love story and I don't care about anyone after they hit the iceberg, it's a love story that only cares about those two because it's a love story that happens to be set amidst the greatest disaster of the, maritime disaster in history. And the thing that I've taken away from it in the 25 years since it came out is I have tried to be better about understanding who films are made for and understanding that just because I didn't get it doesn't mean I have any insight into what's wrong with it. I do think there are palpably things wrong with Titanic. There are things about it that are just not very well done. But I have really taken on board that you are not a teenage girl. And so as the 25th anniversary 3D, 4K, HDR for Valentine's Day is 25 years after being incredibly snotty about it. Despite the fact that I still don't like it, and I don't think I ever will, it doesn't matter. And I do think that when it comes to Avatar Way of Water, which is kind of, coincidentally in cinemas right now, that there is a part of me that thinks, yeah, but you didn't understand Titanic, did you?
Okay, interesting. I remember when we did a live conversation with Leonardo DiCaprio a couple of years afterwards, and then at the end of it, you said, "I forgive you for Titanic," which he was somewhat surprised to hear, I believe, because I don't think he thought that he needed
I was
forgiveness.
Insufferable. I mean, I'm sure I am still insufferable, but I was even more insufferable then than I am now.
The edges are being knocked off as we.
It's just because we're old and tired. Were you ever insufferable?
Oh well, I'm sure. Just reminded me of the.
What voice was that?
I don't know.
It was like Hugh Grant.
Ridiculous, wasn't it? I'm sure this came up at the time, but hey, let's go with it again. My favourite cartoon of all time, which was in Punch magazine. Not quite sure in what year, but was
it in a dentist's waiting room?
It's set at the time of so it's the Titanic. The ship has gone down.
Right.
There's a crowd outside the shipping office waiting for news. And right at the back of the crowd, there's a zookeeper with a polar bear on a stick, on a chain or something from the zoo. And the zookeeper shouts, "Never mind the survivors. Is there any news of the iceberg?" And it occurred to me at the time that was fine. Probably didn't come out in 1917. Did come out in recent years. Anyway, okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, so that's back out. I didn't know that Titanic was coming back out. So anyway,
25th anniversary in time for,
if you go out and see it for your Valentine's Day celebration, let us know what it's like after all these years. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.